Hey, I'm Tom Touchstone here today.
I'm Mike Harvey.
Yeah, special edition of Lunch Break. We're blessed to have Jeremy Adams as our guest today. That sounds like a real stage name, Jeremy Adams.
You know, I always thought Jeremy was kind of a weak name. I needed a name like Bob or something like that.
Tom or Mike.
Yeah.
I
like
love
Tom
it.
or Mike.
Wasn't there like some kind of musician that was Adams back in like the 80s? I remember something like that.
Brian Adams was
Yeah,
wonderful.
there we go.
By the way, one of the most underappreciated rock stars, Brian Adams, most underappreciated founding father, John Adams, and as I say, most underappreciated teacher, Jeremy Adams. So there's something about the name Adams.
I love it. We're here today with him, and he's a teacher, a civic teacher out of Cal State Bakersfield, writer on politics, education, and an author of Riding the Wave. That's not a surfing book, is it?
No, because if it was me writing about my knowledge of surfing, it'd be about 2 pages long. So no, absolutely not.
We're not that far from the beach.
Yeah.
Riding a Wave and Hollowed Out, a warning about America's next generation. Now that has my attention.
Good.
That is something that is concerning. I know I'm going to get information on it, but that's the opening tag on your Amazon product description of this book. So it must have been on your mind when you were writing that book, right, Jeremy?
Well, yeah. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I would tell you that I've taught long enough. I know I look like I'm 30 years old, but I'm really 45. So I've been teaching for almost a quarter of a century, and so I can tell you, fellas, that things have changed in the last 5 to 10 years.
Just that long.
Just that long.
Yeah.
Just that long. And these are changes that are worrisome. I would say that they are almost pernicious in their nature. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, if you want to be famous, don't be a teacher. If you want to be rich, don't be a teacher. But there is a unique advantage to being a classroom teacher, and that is that sometimes we see these kinds of embryonic changes earlier than everybody else does.
Yes.
Right? Because we're in the ground floor of the culture.
Yeah.
And what I've seen, because I teach at Bakersfield High School, I teach at CSUB, I'm a father of teenagers.
Congratulations.
Yeah, which makes me look older than 45 now. But
and feel older.
But the things that I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, and my current and former students, are profoundly upsetting. And this book is essentially me jumping up and down, waving my arms, telling everybody in our country, look, you need to pay attention to the changes that are happening right now. Because if you don't, then individual lives are not going to be as meaningful, and this experiment called America is not going to survive either.
You know what we see it in the Bible, where the Bible says we're just one generation away from slipping away. My wife's an educator, and she always gets the question, what do teachers do? She goes, what we do is make a difference.
Yes.
You know, that is something they do. And that's what I always appreciate about a teacher. I think everybody last year, and you and I kind of talked about it, I think everybody last year really appreciated teachers when the kids came to home to learn in their houses.
Yeah.
I know people are telling my wife, you guys are underpaid. I don't care what you make, you need to make more. So I do agree with you that it is that. So you've written the 2 books. And what do you see? I mean, you teach high school and you teach next level in the college.
Well, I really believe that the title of the book is very powerful.
It is.
Our young people are hollowed out. So when you think about the things that give life its meaning, its purpose, the things that give us a sense of passion, of enchantment, of grandeur, it's things like our families. It's things like love of God, love of country, friendship, learning, a kind of connection to a place, to an ideal, to an aspiration. And when you look at the way that our young people are living their lives today, and this is something I'm going to talk about in my speech here in a little while, which is that there are some people who are completely in denial, knee-jerk denialism, where the book has been out now for only about 3 months. But the only criticism I really get, and it does annoy me, is, well, every generation thinks the next one is in trouble. Every generation thinks the kids are just going to hell in a handbasket. And what I would say to them is, no, this is a uniquely perilous generation. Few facts here. Last year, the CDC released a study that said that 1/4 of 18 to 25-year-olds have considered suicide in their lives.
A fourth
of 18 to 25-year-olds. The rates of self-harm in the last 10 years have gone up by 53% with young people.
That is
rates of
astounding.
And self-harm and suicide both have gone catastrophically up. So when people say, well, no, this generation is the same as any other, and you're just an old man, go away, boomer. No, our young people are more unhappy than any young people in the history of our country, and we've got to ask the question, why? They're spending 9 or 10 hours a day on their devices. They live lives completely untethered to adult values, adult expectations, adult relationships. 1 out of 5 millennials don't have a good friend in the entire world. Half of 18 to 34-year-olds don't have a romantic partner. And so the desire for marriage and family is in free fall. And don't even get me started about their view of the country. Again, there was a study last year that a majority of 18 to 29-year-olds have a more positive view of socialism than capitalism. And 1 out of 5 millennials think the American flag is a symbol of hate. So don't tell me that this generation is not uniquely in bad shape. And we need to be talking about what's hollowing them out and what's making them so miserable.
So, we're coming up this week on Veterans Day.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that mean? I've got on our lunch break show, we've got my co-host is a veteran, lost an arm in Afghanistan, and the guest is a double amputee. And so both of them are very passionate about what they have contributed.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think's driving that, Jeremy?
Well, I think there are a few things. I think that you have one big thing, and then I think you have a lot of things that are kind of throwing gas under the flames. I think the big thing is that I'm a kind of a core conservative principle is that politics does not drive civilization, culture drives civilization. And we have a culture in which young people are immersed in a kind of radicalized individualism where they don't just have a right to their own opinions, they think they have a right to be right. And they're not just morally relativistic, they're nihilistic. They don't think that there's a right and wrong. What they think is wrong is judgment, and that everybody should simply tolerate what they think about individual action. So it's very interesting, this kind of duality you see in young people. When it comes to politics, they absolutely believe there's right and wrong, and racism is wrong, and destroying the environment is wrong, and I completely agree with them. That's great. But when it comes to personal morality, they're completely morally relativistic. So they're political absolutists and moral relativists in their personal life. And so it makes it really difficult to kind of give them a sense of what's possible in life when they have this kind of radical individualism. And so what feeds that radical individualism? Well, their devices do. Right? On their devices, they can entertain themselves. They can literally go anywhere they want to in the world. One of the things I've noticed with young people is they don't go out. They don't go to the movies. They don't go to football games. They don't date. And so that kind of lack of connection, right? That kind of connection to their school, their country. There's no church. There's not as much friendship. There's no dating. They don't read books. They don't read books. You are more likely to read a book at the age of 13 in this country than 17 because social media has driven out all that time that requires to read a book. And now they don't have the attention span, by the way, to read a book. And so all of these things that fill in the human soul are not there.
So
they're hollowed out.
I noticed this as you're talking about it. And it just dawned on me that there again, I was an athlete in high school, and you took pride in your Letterman's jacket, or you took and you don't see that anymore. I don't know if that's the trend.
No, that's true. It's funny. It's so funny you say that because I said to my students the other day who are athletes, I'm like, whatever happened to the Letterman's jacket?
Yes.
If you had the big, Bakersfield High School.
I had one.
If you had the big B as a freshman, you were awesome. Right? The ladies like that, right? So you wanted to get the big B as soon as possible. They don't have that. And I'll be honest, you go to rallies and the kids just aren't, the whole idea of school spirit is very alien to them. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've spent my whole life teaching American civics. And what you mentioned a moment ago is so right. We are just one generation away. America is not a matter of blood. It's not a matter of skin color. You have to understand what America is, right? You absorb it through learning it. And so our former national motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, we are one. Our young people know how diverse we are. They know the many. We know how different we all are, but they have no idea what that one is. The first 3 words of the Constitution, we the people. What unites us? They have no idea because we're focused on all the things that divide us all the time.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember roughly about a year or so ago, and I'm roughly your age. And
28, awesome.
Right? Yeah. I said I'm 39 forever.
Okay. Both of your age. No.
So I was having a conversation with some guys that are like roughly 10, 15, 20 years younger than me, somewhere in there. And they were talking about a girl, and I was like, well, why don't you just call her? And they looked at me like dumbfounded, like, call her. Why would I do that?
Why would you make yourself vulnerable?
Right.
You
I'm
know?
like, what do you like? And I hate texting even. But
Yeah, no, and it's interesting when you ask young people, why aren't you dating, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people want to give it, economic reasons. Well, millennials and Gen Z, we don't give enough pay to them and they don't have enough benefits. But if you ask them, why don't you want to commit to somebody? The answer is, I just can't handle that kind of a commitment. And yet, what's so upsetting to me is we have a generation of young people who love freedom, right? They understand, I want to be free to say and do whatever I want. But what they don't understand is that the good stuff of life, right? The meaning of life is when you figure out what to use that freedom to connect yourself to, right? And they don't want to take that second step. So they want the car keys, but they don't want to have to earn the license.
You know what I see in our the things that we do is sometimes marriage. It's nice to go in, but ready to check out. We see it. We want God there at the wedding, but not at the divorce.
Right. Right.
So it's this idea where we want to bring that in when we're getting married, but when we're dissolving the marriage because we don't get along. And I said that's what the beauty becomes is when two people start to figure it out. They start to work on it because it's hard.
That is a brilliant point. And my favorite writer is Tolstoy, and Tolstoy talks about how. The problem with kind of young people's view of marriage, and I'm sure you see this as pastor much more than I do, because as a teacher, I don't get involved in their marriages, but the research is very clear that a lot of young people see marriage as just another way of satisfying their individual desires. So the moment that marriage gets hard, and folks, it gets hard, it gets real.
Yeah.
I tell my students all the time, guys, you think there are good times and bad times? There are good years and bad years.
Even when you have a great spouse.
Even when you have a great spouse.
If you're out there in the audience, don't let us deter you.
No.
But some of the best things are the things that you worked for. You had pride and ownership. Both my daughters graduated from college. Both had 3 to 4 jobs.
Yeah.
When they said we're tired, I say, well, that's good because when you're young, you could afford to be tired.
Exactly. Well, and then the second point there is what you're saying though is that when you look at marriage as a commitment that allows you to transform yourself into a qualitatively better man or woman instead of just I'm just going to satisfy my desires in this new circumstance, then that's the magic of marriage. And actually, the research, and I talk about this in the book a lot. The research is very clear that sometimes a lot of marriages, if you stick to it. Like if you really stick to it through thick and thin, the kids, the money, the fights, the socks on the floor, the wife buying too much stuff on Amazon every night. Not that I'm getting too personal, but when you stick through it, that a lot of the research shows that there's like a second honeymoon. I'm waiting for it, by the way. But
well, your children are still at home.
Yes, exactly right.
Mine are both gone, and my wife. And we say you have to invest in that marriage while you're in it when the kids are home, because when they leave, you're looking at each other like, do we even know each other? Do we even like each other?
What do we have in common?
So you can't afford to do that then. But you tell people, because I see it towards the end, where that relationship is so much better. It's like you've made so much deposits to your marriage that when you do have to make a withdrawal, when your health isn't good, you're needing your spouse to be there for you, then that's when that value and you really sinks in. I'm glad I stuck it out in those younger years, because those were the easier years. And those older years, you have your spouse there with you, your helpmate, your other. And so I see that as people get older, and especially let's say they got out of a marriage or 2 marriages, they endure that alone.
Yeah.
And sometimes you look at that and go, man, it would have been nice to have something sticking. I'm not saying that because there's a lot of reasons people don't stick in a marriage, but I'm just saying it is worth it, like you said, towards the end.
So Jeremy, what can we do as like parents or older people to start to reverse this trend?
Great question. Well, I mean, the most important thing is, and again, this is what I really want your listeners and people who aren't with young people every day. It's really hard for, I think, the average American to understand just how much young people are not around adults. Right? I mean, human beings are creatures who learn by example.
Yeah.
And we're either improved or depraved by those examples in front of us. And if you think about it, young people, and this is before the pandemic, they were spending 9 or 10 hours a day on their devices in their rooms by themselves, right? No adults. What videos are they watching? They're watching silly, or there's actually a lot of stuff they shouldn't be watching.
Yeah.
That's not childish, but that is corrupting of their moral sensibilities. Meals. young Americans do not eat meals as
That's so
families
true.
anymore, right? Every kid wants to go into their room, do their own thing. The parents want to watch TV. I mean, I had this revelation a few years ago when I talked about the family dinner, and my students all looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" You know, at night, you know, kids, you know, when you put the meal on the table and you eat, and they're like, "We
Turn
don't
the
do
TV
that."
off?
Yep. Yeah, and they don't do that. And so, you know, the number one thing is for a generation that is untethered to adults and adult values and adult behavior, we have got to put ourselves back into the spaces
Yeah.
of our young people today. Their intellectual space, their moral space, their physical space. And if the adults in our society can't adult again, because we're supposed to be the reservoir
Yes.
of wisdom, aren't we, right? We've lived this life, fellas. We've gone through the trials and the tribulations, and we've walked through the fire, and we should be able to look to young people and say, you know what? If it doesn't break you, it makes you stronger, right? The hard stuff is the good stuff. And yet they're not getting that message, right? They're getting this really hollow, shallow view that the road to fulfillment is not about connecting to deep things like family, country, and God. They're getting the message that I find fulfillment by just simply not connecting to anything and simply indulging myself all the time. And that we have got to model what a substantive, meaningful life looks like again. Does that make any sense?
You know
Yeah,
why?
it does.
I think people don't like to do that because it's not-
hard.
Yeah, it's
hard.
hard. It's you have to be intentional. You have to put out work to do it, and you know we do that in my family. But we're not the. My kids are like, Dad, why don't we have phones? Why my friends?
Yeah.
Have phones. I'm just like we. So I'm pretty strict about it.
Because and by the way, I think a lot of people, when I was doing all these interviews for the book, I think a lot of people thought that my frustration was just as a teacher, and here I am like I'm Moses on Mount Sinai,
Right.
and I have all the commandments. No, I have a lot of regrets as a parent. I gave my daughters phones too early. I didn't monitor it enough. And I regret that. And with our son, we're being a lot better about it. But I'll tell you what, here's the thing. It's a lot easier to let them go to their rooms. It's a lot easier to give them the device instead of talking to them.
Well, we told my son he was getting in the habit of going to his room and shutting the door. I said, "You shut that door again, I'm taking the door off."
Good.
As you go through it, it even talks about if you're out there and you have children, like Jeremy said, it's okay to say I was wrong. It's okay to say I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry. Those are
In
okay
fact, it's
words.
healthy. I think it helps if kids see that
models,
you
yes.
mess up.
And so if you take the time and you regain that ground that maybe you lost, because it is a hard job to be a parent too.
Oh, yeah.
When you go into having
hardest
children,
job.
that was the most fun you're going to probably have outside of watching them grow up and succeed in life.
Yeah.
But being a parent, taking the time to be that parent, and so some people may have to reorganize what they're doing. Like you said, the family dinner time.
Yeah.
I love it when my daughter comes home. She came home from Irvine this last week, and she said, "Hey, we're going to go back. We're going to eat. We're going to turn TV off." And I go, "This is good."
I love that.
My wife and I got away from that. I go, "But this is good." And we sat there and we talked, and it was regathering. So I'm sitting here saying, after my daughter was grown, came back, she taught us some cool things. So I love that. Well, Jeremy, I had a great time talking to you. I mean,
We could have gone on for.
yeah.
You should have gone. I had a lot. Yeah,
you got me stimulated here. So anything that you would like to say to our audience that might, something you may not get a chance to say again?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The most important thing is to understand that the most precious, valuable thing in our society is our children.
Yes.
Yep.
And we want them to live meaningful, full
Yes.
lives. I'm not making this up. We are literally raising a generation of young people who don't know how to use their freedom. They don't know how to be fulfilled. They don't have good models in their life. They're not reading. They're not learning. They're not interacting. And I'm telling you now, the first step of fixing that is to know why. That's why I wrote Hollowed Out. I've put my entire soul into it, and I've braved a lot of arrows. So please read it. Please recommend it. And please get into the arena of your children's lives.
Let me grab a copy and show it. Go ahead and show your book. Then go on.
I'll let you. There you go. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Get a good look at it, guys. There again, you're getting a chance right here and now to change what you're doing. I love that. I love Jeremy. Thank you so much.
That was
doing
great
what
fun.
you
Thank
did.
you so much. It was great
Thank you,
to meet
man.
Thank
This
you.
was awesome.
Thank you.
So there again, special edition of Lunch Break. Take care.
Bye.